the defendant, with premeditation, beat and strangled Christine Melton in her home before stealing her vehicle and driving to meet his girlfriend, Melissa Montanez. After Montanez refused to get into the car with him, the defendant battered her in broad daylight. The defendant told law enforcement, when Ms. Montanez managed to flee from the defendant, he fled the scene and drove back to Cape Coral, where he decided that he would murder another person. He saw Diane Ruiz walking to work and pulled over, pretending to ask for directions. She got into the car to provide directions, but the defendant strangled her when she tried to exit. He then drove to an empty lot, strangling her into unconsciousness at least one additional time on the way there. When she tried to flee, the totality of the circumstances warrants that the defendant, Wade Stephen Wilson, be sentenced to death for each count of first-degree murder. Accordingly, it is ordered in the judge that the defendant, Wade Stephen Wilson, be sentenced as follows. Count 1, first-degree murder of Christine Melton. The defendant is hereby sentenced to death. Count 2, grand theft of a motor vehicle. The defendant is sentenced to 5 years imprisonment in the Florida Department of Corrections. Count 3, battery. The defendant is hereby sentenced to 364 days in the Lee County Jail. Count 4, first-degree murder of Diane Ruiz. The defendant is hereby sentenced to death. Count 5, the burglary of a dwelling. The defendant is hereby sentenced to 15 years imprisonment in the Florida Department of Corrections. Count 6, petty theft. The defendant is hereby sentenced to 364 days in the Lee County Jail. The defendant is given credit for all time served on this case on all counts. All counts are to run concurrent with each other, meaning at the same time. All statutorily mandated fines, fees, and costs as announced on the record are imposed, and the defendant is committed to the custody of the Department of Corrections for execution of this sentence as provided by law. The defendant is hereby notified that these convictions and sentences are subject to